morning catcher upper. Had an interesting experience. We got down below freezing last night, and I had to stay up and mind the water every couple hours. I had to run a little through the pipes. So what I did, another thing I had to do to keep the house warm, is I went ahead and I fired up the oven in the kitchen. I decided I was going to bake a cake. Now, I've played with Green Life stuff before and other non-stick stuff, and here's what I've learned. Here's what I've learned. First of all, I've learned my wife thinks I'm incompetent. You shouldn't mess with anything like that until it cools. I've baked cakes ever since I was in my frickin' 20s. You know, I don't know, there's just this whole thing. Thinks I'm frickin' incompetent or some crap. Thinks I'm dumb. You know, I'm not that fucking dumb that I'm gonna let a cake, cut on a cake and shit while it's hot. I let that sucker, I set the timer. Here's what happened. Here's what happened. I had two kinds of nonstick cookware up there. Well, bakeware. I'm going to tell you one thing. Anything says nonstick is friggin' bullshit when it comes to baking. I baked it in a 9 by 9 Green Life bake pan. Now, Green Life says do not put oil on it. Do not put grease on it. It will destroy the ceramic finish. Always use it clean as it comes. So I did this. You guys, I look like crap, I know, but I just gotta say this. I mean, I'm so pissed off, man. I went through two batches of cake mix. Second one came out better than the first. First of all, Green Life Bakeware sucks, except for their cookie sheets. Their bread pans and their cake pans, total crap. So I did what they said. And I went ahead and I did the cake and I baked it. It's like 3 eggs. It's one of them quickie cakes. I think it's Betty Crocker, super moist. 3 eggs, 1.5 cups water, and I think it was it was a half a cup of cooking oil. No milk. It's the first cake I've ever messed with that I didn't have to put a little milk in it. But anyway, went ahead and did it. I've used their stuff before. Never had a problem. Of course, I've always greased the cake pan, or I've put a little flour in there, or a little oil, or whatever it calls for, and it's always come out perfect. But with this, I had to make that modification because Green Life absolutely forbids you putting anything like oil or grease on it. If you go to their website, they tell you that it can destroy the finish and it will no longer be non-stick. It'll wreck it. That bake pan had never had anything like that in it. It was clean, clean. I mean, straight out of the dishwasher. And it rose perfectly. It rose beautifully. It took about 35 to 40 minutes, and I did the toothpick test and all that, how you do it. And I got the long knife. After it cooled, I waited for it to cool for like 15 minutes in that pan. And I'm thinking, oh, this is going to be awesome. It rose so beautiful. It was one of those chocolate fudge cakes. So I go over it with a knife after it's cooled, along the top, and I get the bulge out of it because that becomes the bottom of the cake. You flip it out of the pan, and then you have a square cake or a round cake if you got a round pan. Didn't want to come out. Holy crap. You know what it did instead? I flipped it, and all the guts of that cake went out of there, man. And all that stuff that was in contact with that Green Life just, it was like half the cake came out, and the other half of the cake is bonded to the Green Life. And it's like, son of a. All that time, all that work, getting all that just right. I had another thing of cake mix, so I threw all that crap away. I threw it. It was just it was garbage. It's just chunks of cake and pieces. Because the super moist cakes, they are very soft cake. If you don't get the flip right, if it doesn't pop out there on the first shot, your cake is pieces and chunks, and it's everywhere. So that was a total disaster. Just Teresa, our friend who's boarding with us right now while she's going to school, had just bought a thing of Copper Chef. You know, these new copper pots. So I went ahead and I tried that. It had a completely different texture. Nothing seemed to stick to it. It's brand new. And I mixed up another batch and I put it in there. Now that I had to let it go shorter because it was a wider pan, which also kind of screwed me up. I was about zero point 0.5 times less than what I needed to complete that because it was a slightly larger pan. The cake mix didn't rise all the way to the top of the pan, so there wasn't much to cut off the top. There's just a little bulge. But here's the thing, that Copper Chef stuff, I can testify to that. When that did its thing, and after the 10 minutes cooling time, I flipped it over, it just popped right out. It was like it was buttered or something. It just bloop right onto the pan. The only problem was the cake was so fragile. Even though I let it cool, the super moist cakes, if you don't have it just right when you flip it, if you don't have something right against it, and because it didn't rise to the top of that pan, just a tiny little bit was bulging out. I was able to cut that tiny little bit off, but because the shape was abnormal when I flipped it over, a little bit crumbled on one side, just a tiny bit. But the stuff that came out of there, it was flawless. It was the texture of the pan, like every fleck, every indenture, every detail that was in the Copper Chef was in the detail of the top of the cake when it popped out. It was like I had greased that sucker to, like greased it to hell, and then just it was amazing. So I can tell you now from experience, they're not BSing about the Copper Chef stuff. And you know what's great about Copper Chef? They got it at the dollar store at Dollar General's carrying that stuff. They're carrying the bake pans, and the bake pan comes with little dividers, so you can actually make brownies and stuff with it. I bet you guys never knew I cooked or baked or anything. But it's a flawless product. It was flawless victory, other than the mistakes I made not making enough mix for that big of a pan. But it rose beautifully. I mean, it did what it was supposed to do as cake batter. It's just there wasn't enough. So I got it out. And what I'm going to do, since this happened, the little crumble is easy to fix. It just cracked. So I'm going to ice over that. But I've got some yellow cake mix, so I'm going to do like a brown yellow. I'm going to do another layer. And then I'm going to lay that out. And I'm just going to make a 2-layer cake is what I'm going to do. Because that was really cool. That Copper Chef is pretty freaking awesome stuff. So, yeah. Sorry I'm having to hold the camera. I'm laying in the bed. I'm dog tired, man. I stayed up all night because of the freezing weather we had in this house, because I can't get under this house to insulate all the pipes. And they're those damn galvanized pipes. They're like copper. If it gets around freezing and you don't have any way to heat them or wrap them, they're going to freeze. And the only thing you can do to protect them is to keep a little water moving through them. You can either trickle the water, which is going to cost you a small fortune if you live in the city. And plus it's no guarantee, because if it gets below a certain point, if you don't have it trickling enough, it'll still freeze in the pipes. Or you can do what I do. I set a timer after it gets below freezing. Around 32, about an hour and 30 minutes, I'll get up and I'll run water through everything for about 30 seconds. I start with the kitchen sink. Well, the kitchen sink was freezing at the drop of a hat. So the kitchen sink I put warm, hot, cold right in the middle, and I let it trickle just barely. But the bathrooms, I start by turning the sinks and the bathtubs on. Let those run until the water gets warm, about 30, 45 seconds, somewhere around there. You run it a little longer because if there is any ice buildup in there, you want it to You want that to erode off and come out of the faucet. When when the water moves over it, it will very quickly melt it. If you stay on top of it. And then once those run, shut them off. Flush both toilets. Toilets take a while to fill up anyway, so it's gonna take any ice out of the line that might have started to deposit. And then set the timer. Go to sleep. An hour and 30 minutes. Get up. Do it all again, or cat nap. Then when it gets below 32, it gets down around 29. Then you got to go once an hour. If it gets about 26 or lower, you got to do it about every 30 to 45 minutes, depending. If you and if you stay vigilant, your pipes don't freeze. This is also the reason I don't travel. And even when I was further south in southern latitudes, when it was in the 30s, I didn't travel. People say, "Why don't you come visit us?" Nope. I'd look at that forecast. If there was anything in the 30s, stayed home. Take care of your pipes, especially if you can't get under there to replace them when they bust. Because a plumbing job, oh man, you do it yourself, it's a pain in the ass. You have somebody else do it, you're going to be sitting in the poorhouse. You don't have to worry about your pipes anymore because you went broke trying to fix them. But anyway, but no, that pissed me off. I don't know. She thinks I'm some kind of dumbass or something. It's things like this that get to me. Things like this that get to me. You gotta let it cool before you mess it. You think I'm that dumb? And it's stupid things like that. I don't know. But I can say, if it says non-stick, if it says non-stick on it, don't you frickin' trust it. If you're baking a cake, don't you frickin' trust it. You'll ruin that job almost every time. So as far as the green life stuff, I don't know if I'm ever going to use it again for making a cake. I'm just going to get regular bakeware, and I'm just going to make the damn cake how it's supposed to be made. We'll oil or grease that pan. We'll have a regular pan, because that's such BS. I ruined 2 boxes of cake mix over that crap. Thankfully, I got them for free. There's some that were dropped off. My mother stopped consuming sugary products, and by windfall, we got all this stuff. So, like 2 things of super moist fudge chocolate, man. The other one's edible. Like I said, I'm gonna save that one. I got the cake still sitting in there on the pan, covered. I'm just gonna make in the same pan. I'm gonna make the yellow, and I'm gonna double layer that sucker. I gotta go get some frosting that's appropriate for that. And I'm just gonna make a big square cake. Well, a big rectangular cake. And that's how we're going to do it. So, anyway, I'll let y'all go. And that's how my night went. That and basically sitting in this semi catatonic zombie like state most of the night, waiting for that timer and watching YouTube. So, y'all have a good morning. I won't be awake for it, but yeah. Take care, guys. It's good to see y'all again.